strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you.
Now we're on forgiveness. It's on the other sheet.
Let's go have the other sheet.
Did everybody get the other sheet? They didn't get the other sheet. No, some
We'll take that up
people
to
got
the
the other
resource.
sheet. Somebody's getting fired. Person.
Who's the Lifeway distributor?
Abby and Mr. McRoll.
I wasn't gonna call any names.
You ready?
Those that don't deserve
now, Seth Lieutenant.
Brother Wayne.
Very talented.
All right.
14-point message.
No, not that. I tried to keep it short.
We're gonna do prayer requests.
Yeah, sure. All right, so
Communion.
I wasn't really sure what all I wanted to say. Throughout the week, I was looking over different things, things that I've been reading, just things that have been kind of going on in my life. Usually that's what I try to talk about. I actually went back and reread some of the stuff that I'd written before, and that's where I decided to go with. The first time I led the Sunday school class last year, I talked about all the different character traits of Jesus that we don't really talk about a lot. I went back and started rereading through that book that I got a lot of the stuff from, and I decided to focus on one of the traits and kind of bring it to our own lives a little bit. And that trait is generosity. It's not really a trait we talk a lot about in church, but it's one I felt called to talk about. So I actually found a quote on generosity that I thought was kind of cool. It says, "You give but little when you give your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give." And I really thought that was cool just because of the stories of Christ's generosity that we'll read. He lived that one out. I was thinking, one of the reasons I thought about generosity was a lot of the people that I admire the most, friends and family and other people I look up to, have generosity just kind of woven into who they are. Different things they do just show that generosity, and it's admirable. And the reason it's so admirable is because I feel like it embodies humility, selflessness, and love. Because to be generous, you have to give something that either you want or that someone else needs more than you, which is thinking less of yourself in a humble sense, and it's selfless, and it's loving the other person. So I have a couple of different passages. They're all real short from stories of Christ and his generosity, which is going to be all in Matthew and Mark. So the first one is in Matthew 8. It says, "Large crowds followed Jesus, and as he came down the mountainside, suddenly a man with leprosy approached him and knelt before him. 'Lord,' the man said, 'if you are willing, you can heal me and make me clean.' Jesus reached out and touched him. 'I am willing,' he said. 'Be healed.' And instantly the leprosy disappeared." All right, and the next story is just 2 verses later. It says, "When Jesus returned to Capernaum, a Roman officer came and pleaded with him. 'Lord, my young servant lies in bed paralyzed and in terrible pain.' Jesus said, 'I will come and heal him.'" Then, still in Matthew 8, more stories of Christ. It says, "When Jesus arrived at Peter's house, Peter's mother-in-law was sick and in bed with a high fever. But when Jesus touched her hand, the fever left her. She got up and prepared a meal for him." And then we are in Matthew 20. And it says, here we go. "Two blind men were sitting beside the road when they heard that Jesus was coming that way. And they began shouting, 'Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us.' 'Be quiet,' the crowd yelled at them. But they only shouted louder, 'Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us.' When Jesus heard them, he stopped and called, 'What do you want me to do for you?' 'Lord,' they said, 'we want to see.' Jesus felt sorry for them and touched their eyes. Instantly they could see him. Then they followed him." And then in Mark, we find more stories of Christ's giving. Starting in chapter 2, verses 4 and 5. It says, "They couldn't bring him to Jesus because of the crowd, so they dug a hole through the roof above his head. Then they lowered the man on his mat right down in front of Jesus. Seeing their faith, Jesus said to the paralyzed man, 'My child, your sins are forgiven.'" And in Mark 6, verse 31. "Then Jesus said, 'Let's go off by ourselves to a quiet place and rest a while.' He said this because there were so many people coming and going to his apostles didn't have time to eat. So they left the boat for a quiet place where they could be alone." Let's see, hold on. Oh, I think I'm in the wrong one. No, I'm But many people recognized him and saw them leaving, and the people from many towns ran ahead along the shore and got there ahead of him. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. And then our last one is in 7 verse 2. It says, "They noticed that some of his disciples failed to follow the Jewish ritual of hand washing before eating." Hold on. Never mind. That's the wrong one. Alright. But anyways, those are all just examples of Christ's generosity. And one of the things that I love from all those stories is all the different scenarios. I have late into the night, early in the morning, walking down the road in the middle of his supper, at home, and abroad. Jesus offers his time, his words, his touch, all flowing generously. I wrote that because I thought it was cool seeing it's not just times where he's designated to be teaching that he does things like that. It's in any situation that arises, his first response is to give. To appreciate this, we have to remember that Jesus was also human. He got tired. He had things that he needed to do, but in the midst of it, he would still give of himself. It says he's lavish with himself, and that's the key. It's the giving of himself. That's what's so precious. Moses offered leadership. Solomon offered wisdom free of charge. Pilate seemed willing to hand out anyone the crowd wanted, but Jesus gives himself. And that's, after all, what he came to give and what we most desperately needed. And so, based on that, I wrote that generosity is more than just an act. It's more of a character trait. Because in order to be truly generous with yourself, you have to embody the humility and the selflessness that goes along with generosity. Because anybody can just kind of give money or give other things, but it's those who truly have that humility that have a generous attitude, and those who care for others. So I just decided that was what I wanted to kind of bring to light. It's just one of those character traits of Jesus we don't really talk a lot about, and that's generosity. So, thank you.
Okay, and this is John 16:33. It says, "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world."
church.
I love you all. You are. I love you all.
You should have tagged Mark
You should
Mark.
tag Mark.